Hello, I'm Christian J. Baui, a second year student and a English major. Today I'm going to discuss to you about Jean Piaget's cognitive stages of development. For the next slide, we have the quote of the day, also written by Jean Piaget. The principal goal of education is to create men who are capable of doing new things, not simply of repeating what other generations have done. Um, Jean Piaget's cognitive development theory, suggests that intelligence changes as children grow. A child's cognitive development is not just about acquiring knowledge. The child has also to develop or construct a mental model of the world. As the child grows, of course, their intelligence level or their ability also develops. Jean Piaget's cognitive development suggests that children move through four different stages, and these four different stages are the sensory motor stage, the pre-operational stage, the concrete operational stage, and the formal operational stage. We will discuss that each. Let's now go to the sensory motor stage, which is the first stage. It is the 0 to 2 years old or from birth to infancy. The term sensory motor focus on the prominence of senses and muscle movement through which the infant comes to learn about himself and the world. It is him who will discover the world. Initially reflexive in grasping, sucking, and reaching. Of course, they're still baby, they're still young. There is their ability to suck their fingers, their hands. In this stage, we have this main goal or achievement, and that goal or achievement is the object permanence. What is object permanence? Object permanence is understanding that objects continue to exist when even when they cannot seen, heard, or touched. The ability of the child to know that an object still exists even when out of sight. As you can see, Piaget also described a baby at this age as a scientist. You wonder, why scientist, right? To give you some clear view of this one, give you example. Dropping the spoon many times, or a child repeatedly dropping a spoon. With that, a child will realize that when an object or a thing falls, it goes downwards and not upwards. They create patterns with the repetitive actions and evaluate them. And what they evaluate when they dropping a spoon, they realize that, as I said earlier, that when an object falls, it goes down and not upwards. Pasike and R. Gorenkov by the year 2003 also believe that babies are pattern seekers, which is related to our given example. That is object permanence. Let's now move on to our stage 2, which is the pro-operational stage, 2 to 7 years old, or the preschool years. Intelligence at this age is intuitive in nature. At this age, the child can make mental representation and is able to pretend that the child is now ever closer to the use of, take note, symbols. At this age, we have the following: symbolic function, the egocentrism, the centration, the irreversibility, animism, and the transductive reasoning. So it highlights symbols. For the first one, we have the symbolic function. So, so we have the symbolic function. So symbolic function, this is the ability to represent objects and events. A symbol is a thing that represents something else. For example, so when a child, after pretending to drink from an empty glass can turn into a rocket ship. So have you seen a child, or when you see a child after drinking a what drinking from a empty glass, and imagine that it turns into a rocket ship, or for example this pen turns into a magic wand. Their imaginative mind uses symbol to create or to represent something else. So that's how a child's mind is being powerful and imaginative. The next one is the egocentrism. So the egocentrism is the tendency of the child to only see his point of view and to assume that everyone also has his same point of view. For example, a child is still confused why his cousins calling his daddy uncle instead of daddy. Other one is um, when a child is attending a party, he would buy gifts that is one of his favorite. He thinks that his favorite could be also his friend's favorite. For example, he buys candy. He thinks that um, the child or the birthday boy could still or also likes candies without knowing ano kaya yung um, ano kaya yung favorite ng friend niya, right? Parang nag-focus siya kung ano yung gusto niya. Candy, right? So the next one, we have the centration. So what is centration? So centration refers to a child to only focus on one aspect of a thing or event, exclude other aspects. So centration, one example of that is the two container of glass with containing same level or amount of water or colored drinks. Kapag it is same level, but pag yung isang container was transferred to a narrower glass, which is yung mas masikip at mas malaki, the child will answer or can say that water or the level of the water becomes more increase, or it moves, while certainly not. It was just transfer, but still yung laman niya is ganun pa rin. Centration, nag-focus siya sa laki ng baso, hindi sa level ng tubig na doesn't change naman. So the next one, we have the reversibility. So inability to reverse their thinking. So at this age, the child can still be tricked or manipulate. So alam nila na plus 3 is equals to 5, but they can still hardly recognize that 5 minus 3 is 2. So we have the animism. This is a tendency of children to attribute human-like traits or characteristics of inanimate objects. So example with that is when a child is asked, where the sun is, or where is the sun? Saan ang araw? So the child might answer, Mr. Sun is asleep. Mr. Sun is asleep? What is wrong with that? So asleep, the word asleep. Does the sun really sleeps? No, because I it is not a human-like trait, because we all know that only humans or other creations like animals are incapable of doing sleeping or any other thing, right? But the sun do not sleeps. In this stage, the child can be tricked and may answer in that way. So, transductive reasoning next. This refers to operational child's type of reasoning that is inductive nor deductive. So, example with that is forming a conclusion. Like, for example, when a child hears the dog bark, um, and then suddenly a balloon pop, so the child may conclude that the balloon pop it because the dog barks, which is not. There must be some other reasons, but it doesn't mean that because the dog barks, the balloon pops or explodes, right? So let's now move on to the stage 3, or the concrete operational stage. At this age, um, At this stage, it is characterized by the ability of the child to think logically, but only in terms of concrete objects. So, what are concrete objects? This can be sensed with our five senses, or this can be hear, touch, see, smell, or hear. So, those are the concrete objects. It is from 8 to 11 years old on the elementary stage. So this stage is marked by the following: decentering, reversibility, conservation, and seriation. So the first one we have the decentering. So decentering refers to ability of a child to perceive the different features of objects and situation. So the concrete operational state the centering. This allows the child to be more logically when dealing with concrete objects and situation. Centering on concrete objects only. So they're now starting to think logically. So in next, the reversibility. At this stage, a child can now follow that certain objects can be done in reverse. Unlike in irreversibility, the child cannot determine that uh, there is a reversibility or merong nangyayari pagkakabaliktaran. At this stage, which is the concrete operational stage, they can now determine that reverse can happen or can be done. Na recognize na nila yung mga bagay na nagkakabaliktaran. So the next one we have the conservation. So conservation it is the ability to know that certain properties of objects like number, mass, volume, or area do not change even if there is a change in appearance. Yan na naman tayo sa centration. Kanina, nabanggit natin na yung child is still tricked na it is because the other container is transferred into a narrower glass, the level of water decreases or added or move. In this stage, which is the concrete operational stage, the conservation, they can now identify that their mass or volume or area do not change even there is a change in appearance. They can now determine na hindi lahat ng nililipat into a narrower glass or much lower glass can be changed or would have a difference. They can now determine. So the next one we have the seriation. So seriation is the ability of a child to order or arrange things in a series based on one dimension, such as weight, volume, or size. Seriation, they arrange things or objects according to their weight, volume, or size. So as you can see there in this stage, there is an improvement, right? They can now step by step identify things or objects or steps that is in contrast with the pre-operational stage. The next one we have the formal operational stage, ranges from 12 to 15 years old. So in this stage, thinking becomes more logical. In this stage, they can now solve abstract problems and can hypothesize. So you see, abstract problems or abstract. Ba? In concrete operational stage, we had discussed or we had discussed that the concrete objects only con- in concrete operational stage. Here in formal operational stage, they can now solve abstract problems, and take note they can also hypothesize. So this stage is characterized by the following. We have the hypothetical reasoning, the analogical reasoning, and the deductive reasoning. So let's go first to hypothetical reasoning. So hypothetical reasoning, this is the ability of a child to come up with different hypotheses about a problem and to gather and weigh data in order to make a final decision or judgment. So this can be done in the absence or concrete objects. So the individuals can now deal with what if questions. They can now evaluate questions like what if, and also they can now hypothesize and solve a problem. See that every stages has a development, just like what Jean Piaget said, that every every stages as a child grows there is a improvement or development. So next one is the analogical reasoning. So analogical reasoning, the ability to perceive the relationship in one instance and then use that relationship to narrow down possible answers in another situation or problem. So analogical or analogy. You know what analogy means? For example, um, ugly is too pretty as sweeter or sweet is too bitter, right? Analogy. They can now create analogy. So the third one, we have the deductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning is the ability to think logically by applying a general rule to a particular instance or situation. Deductive reasoning. So all countries near the North Pole have cold temperatures, and Greenland is near the North Pole. Therefore, Greenland has cold temperature. So they are now thinking logically by. So the general rule in that example is that all countries near the North Pole have cold temperature, and they assume that, and because the Greenland is near the North Pole, they assume that Greenland has also a cold temperature. So here are the references. So I'd use the book of Child and Adolescent with this discussion, and also you can visit the link provided on your screen, so you can check out on that. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something. If you have questions or clarifications, please feel free to contact me, and the email address of mine is already provided on your screen. You can see my email address and also the my telephone number. So once again, I am the student teacher Christine, and I hope that you learn from me, and thank you for watching.